In 2005, musician Brian Welch made headlines when he came to faith in Christ. Then, he left the popular metal band Korn to become a full-time dad to his daughter. Today, he joins us on Bridges to talk about his journey of faith and what led him back to the band Korn. I want to welcome you to Bridges today. I'm Monica Schmelter. I'm glad that you could join us. My guest today is Brian Welch, and we're going to talk about his latest book called With My Eyes Wide Open. And Brian, I'm so glad you could come to Bridges today.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me.
Well, we're glad to have you, and I enjoyed reading this book. And if you could just kind of give us an overview of what this book is about in your journey of faith.
Well, when I was 10 years old, I got AC/DC's rock album, Back in Black, and I wanted to be a guitar player. And so about a little over a decade later, I found myself in a band, and we got signed and we got famous within a few years, and I lived the life and the whole rock star life, and I got just, the world chewed me up and spit me back out. And the drug addiction and broken marriage and all that stuff. And I came to faith in 2005 through a horrible methamphetamine addiction. I went to church and found out that Jesus was real. I believed what they said. I went home and started talking to him, and the drugs were taken from me, and I got and I stepped into this life of faith with God. And so the book starts off right there, right when I meet God and walking out the next few years through the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the trials and the tribulations and the joys. And I was a single dad, and so I share about raising my daughter and as a young girl into a teenager and all the trials that can come with that.
Absolutely, because parenting is a tough job.
Oh, yes.
As we all know, it requires tough love and just all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I appreciated, Brian, as I read the book, is that you are just so honest about the journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we all have that. And I don't think we have to try to hide that in order to be better Christians, because it's not really helpful. But when you say you went to church and you were in the middle of the drug addiction, is that correct? When you went to church?
Yeah, I was.
So when someone invited you, like, did you think something would happen at church, or did you just go? What made you want to go?
Well, the thing was, I was trying to get sober, and I tried to do it on my own. And I was a functioning alcoholic and drug addict for years, and I could stop. I would try this drug, and I would do like whatever, even the hard drugs, cocaine and meth, and I would do it one weekend and then would not do it for months. Okay. So this time I was hooked for 2 years and I couldn't get off. And so I was like, maybe I'll go to church. One of my friends invited me. I said, well, I think the Christians are sober, so I'll go there. I hope to God they are.
You're right. And
so I went there, and then, I just went, I came as I was, broken and in need of, help.
Yeah. And you say that then you went home and you just started talking with Jesus, and he kind of proved himself real to you over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, now you're in this metal band Korn. When you tell them of your decision, how did that come about when they knew that you met Christ, that something had changed? What was that like?
Honestly, they thought that, people in the world, they're like, oh, he did drugs, thought he saw Jesus. And so, but the thing was, I really had an encounter with him. And so people thought I lost my mind at first. And then I wrote my autobiography of my life story in 2007. And once I wrote that book, it's like the mocking stopped, and people were like, oh, wow, he was really hurting, and maybe God did touch him. So yeah, I shared the real raw story in that book too. Yeah,
you did. And a lot of people got to know you, I think, in a new way from that, and what your faith really meant to you, and that it was serious. And you talk in this book, With My Eyes Wide Open, about what you call the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just all of the things that you've gone through in your faith. And there came a place, Brian, and you talk about it in the book, where being a part of the metal band Korn and all of that, you just wanted to be a full-time dad to your daughter, Janaea.
Yeah.
How did that play out to you? When you talk about being a rock star and just all the success that you knew, and you decide, I'm going to be a full-time dad.
Yeah.
What did that look like, and what was that like for you?
Oh, man. Trying to fit into regular suburbia life. I mean, look at me. It's not easy. But so, yeah, I had some parents at the school kind of talk to the principal. You know, they didn't know, oh, there's a strange guy in the parking lot. And the principal was like, she loved Jesus. And me and her got to talking, you know, and she was like, oh, that's Brian. He's fine. Don't worry about him. And so, yeah, it was awesome, you know, at first, because my daughter she was home a lot with nannies and grandparents and stuff, and I thank God for them. But when I was able to tell her that Dad's going to be home for breakfast, for dinner, for your homework, and every day, she lit up, and she was thinking, is that possible? Can you quit your job? Like, is that even allowed? Because she was so young. But I was like, yes, it's allowed. It's for you. It's all for you. And so I did that for years. I was just with my daughter for years, and then, you know, things were going great, and with me and her. And then I had financial, you know, problems and a lot of trials I went through. But then when I hit the preteen years into the teen years, me and my daughter started struggling a lot. She was struggling with what unfortunately is an epidemic for the teenagers, and, you know, with depression and self-harm and stuff.
That had to be so hard for you. I mean, I think for any parent, you know, to look at your child, to love them so much, and to see that, you know, that they're struggling, that they're depressed, that they're in self-harm. How did you respond to that?
Wow, it was, you know, she started lashing out, and, you know, my sweet little girl was turning into just her own, you know, person. And I started to see one of my main struggles after I met the Lord was anger. And it wasn't all the time, but when something would set me off, I would lose control. And so I started to see that in her as she grew into a teenager. And so we were butting heads and everything. And she was just, you know, I tried the best I could. I got her into school, and we moved to Nashville, and she wasn't connecting with the kids, and she was just isolated, and, you know, the insecurities. And so she just was getting depressed. And then one day she screamed at me and said, I cut myself. And I don't want to live. I want to die. And then, you know, one day she told me it was because of me that she does it. And it was just a world of confusion and everything. And honestly, I was really confused, and I was just going, God, where are you? Yeah. You know, I thought I did everything. When she was 6 years old, I left the crazy rock star life, and I gave my life to you. And I thought I did everything right. And all my prayers over the years for her look unanswered. Yeah. The opposite looks to be happening. But I said, you hold the words to life. Where am I supposed to go?
That's right.
So I just trusted, and I waited, and we got through it. And she is a brand new person to this day right now. And I'm so proud of her.
Yeah, I'm sure that you are. And I understand what you're saying, really, you know, as a parent. And we sometimes feel like when we come to Christ, you know, that we give our hearts to Christ and we make the sacrifices that He asks us to make. And then we think that our lives are going to look, you know, that they're going to be a certain way, that our kids are just, you know, they're going to develop right along. It's all going to be good. But sometimes, Brian, really things do fall apart.
Yeah.
But even though it fell apart, you still had that sense, that faith that God could still work it all out for good.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard, and I was angry, and, you know, but I never quit, and I was just like, you're bigger than this.
That's
you know,
right.
God He lives in, you know, it's cool. Like, He lives in us.
Amen.
So even though that was happening, I held it together. And there's something in me. There's like an ocean of peace that can't be disturbed.
Yeah.
You know, on the outside, of course, I'm freaking out a little bit.
Right.
On the inside, I'm going, wait, this is like little problem
That's
to
right.
God. Even though
That's right.
it looks like a big storm and a giant is getting ready to crush me, I'm like, no, this is a little problem.
That's
like,
right.
And so I had a lot of help with brothers and sisters and everything, and that would encourage me along the way too. So that really helped.
Yeah, and you talk about that a lot in your book, With My Eyes Wide Open.
Yeah.
The people that came around you to support you, friends and other people to help you in that situation. And I even remember, as I read in your book, just, you know, when you had to tell your parents that your daughter, you know, Janaea was into self-harm, that had to be hard for you.
Yeah, because it was Christmas 2000, I believe Christmas 2012, and it had gotten to a point. I mean, we got a counselor for her first, and we said, you know, you talk to her every week, and if it doesn't help, then we're going to have to get more serious help. And so during Christmas that year is when she went off the deep end, and just, you know, the pain inside of her was just coming out, and she had cut herself from here all the way down to her wrists and both sides of her arms. And my mom and dad, they're still together to this day. They're sweet, awesome people. And I was just afraid they were just going to lose it. And so I took my daughter out of the house, and then I went to a cabin that my friend had, and I called them and told them what was going on. And yeah, so around that time, that's when I found an awesome boarding school / counseling place for Janaea, and she just, it broke us in pieces when I brought her there. Because I brought her there and I didn't tell her that she was going to stay. I said we were going to go look at it, and she had threatened to run away if I ever did something like that. So you know, when I got there, I told her she's staying, and she flipped out, was getting ready to bolt for the door, and so we calmed the situation down, and she just broke to pieces. And within a couple months, she was like, I'm supposed to be here.
Right.
So
you did what you had to do.
Yeah.
You're a dad, and moms and dads have to make tough choices. But when we know it's for our children's best interest, we do that. And I'm glad to hear she's doing well. We've got to take a break. We want you to stay with us. You can hear more about Brian's story when we come back.
Log on to www.ctntv.org, where you can make a prayer request, view our program guide, see who's on Bridges, or even watch one of Monica's latest teachings. Log on to www.ctntv.org.
If you're just joining us today on Bridges, my guest today is Brian Welch from the band Korn, and we're talking about his latest book, With My Eyes Wide Open. And you know, Brian, you were just having a chance to share about how your daughter Janaea has really become, you know, has really come full circle and is a beautiful young woman, and that took you really showing a lot of tough love as a parent.
Oh yeah, man, thank God that he was with us, because that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, I'd say.
Yeah, it had to be. And I think an encouragement to those of you that are watching, that you may have a child right now that's really just struggling, but God is always faithful. You know, even as Brian said, through the good, the bad, the ugly in our lives. Yeah. Even when it looks like our prayers aren't being answered, He is working on our behalf.
Yes, yes.
He is. You also talk in your book about, you know, that you struggled a lot with anger. By the time that, you know, you came to faith in Christ, you had struggled with so many, you know, drug addictions, leaving the band Korn to be a full-time dad, and yet becoming a Christian didn't make you perfectly not angry anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? It was discouraging at times, because I had heard people's testimonies, and they're like, my anger was gone, and I'm like, Lord, what about me?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And miraculous deliverances from that. And I got some miraculous deliverances from drugs and everything. So I would battle back and forth, like, thank you, Lord, oh, you're so good. But wait. And so, yeah, the anger thing was just really a factor. And I didn't have control. And I wanted control more than anything. It just, I didn't have control. When something would set me off, I would freak out and even do stuff when my daughter was, you know, 9 or 10. And it would scare her, you know. And there were times when I was going through emotional breakdowns, even like 3 years after, you know, probably about a year and a half after I got saved. And, you know, I was the type of guy that was like, Jesus lives in me, I'm going to stop all my medication. I stopped my my depressing medication, and thought that, you know, I was like, I'm living by faith and all this. And meanwhile, I think looking back that God gave me that, you know, all the good things that come to us are from the Father. And so, yeah, I had some wrong belief systems going on, but the anger, it just, I battled with it year after year. And you know what's funny? Around the same time my daughter was getting help and she went into the boarding school, that's when my anger started to disappear. And it was like He was healing her and healing me.
That's right. Right, because He heals families.
Yes.
He really does. And I think sometimes we don't see it. And it is one of the things that I really liked about your book, With My Eyes Wide Open, is that, you share really honestly about how God, he deals with us all differently. You got miraculous deliverance from drugs, and yet through the anger, he walked you through a process. God walks us through in our lives different people, in different ways. It's not a formula. We just don't say a prayer and then it all comes out, one way. And yet he walked you through this healing journey and it still brought you through. And you talk about a bad belief system of thinking that, maybe I don't need to take antidepressant medicines. I'll just walk by faith and it'll all go away. And I think a lot of us do that, that we think that somehow becoming a Christian is just going to make everything perfectly wonderful and normal, whatever that is, in a second. And it's not that way. It's
not. And, and it's, God bless us all, but sometimes we just, when it says, he who believes, it's all about faith. And, Jesus talks a lot about faith. So, meanwhile, but he wants us to use our wisdom too. He gives us wisdom. So it's
he does.
So it's like, okay, I believe, Lord, that I'm going to stop this medication and you're going to make me better just because you're miraculous. That's, even though it sounds good, and I still believe he can do that.
Amen.
Right?
Absolutely, he can.
We got to follow his lead, and it's not always our will.
That's right.
We want.
And sometimes, Brian, I've learned that, the ingredients God made in that medicine and gave that doctor the wisdom, and that is God's healing for
Yes,
you.
right.
And to accept that and to be grateful for that and not to feel guilty about that it's okay, that we don't have to overfaith it, It can be miraculous, it can be through the everyday, but everything that's good still comes from our Father because he is good. And sometimes our faith just looks weird to people. And I'd love it because you talk about in your book how God brought you back to Korn, the metal band Korn. It was something that you didn't really foresee ever happening again. And it might be something that some people don't understand. But how did that come about? And how is God using you now in that way? Yeah,
that's the thing. And a lot of people, there was some people yesterday online that were just still giving me a hard time. But, I try not to get frustrated, by them, but sometimes I do. And the thing is, I didn't desire this. I left the band. That was a major touring band. When I left, I was fine being with my daughter. And I did go through financial stuff, and I started a solo career, and that was really rocky. But the thing was, he took care of me, and he carried me through all those, everything. And I had a lot of time to sleep in my own bed over the years when I quit. And so to go back, I initially said no, and I didn't want to do it. And then I just, it wouldn't go away. So I started praying. I got counsel, and, from the pastor that brought me into the kingdom. I called him and I said, hey, Pastor Ron, there's something going on. And, Korn has asked me to come back, and I'm feeling it. It might be, and he's like, Brian, I've been praying for this for 4 years that you'd go back there. Those people need Jesus. And so I'm just like, with counsel from people and praying, and, I knew it was time. And I was resistant to it, actually. And some people don't understand it, but, he didn't save us just for us.
No, he didn't.
He wants us to go. Sometimes we got to be around the dark places to be the light, you know?
Well, we are the light in the dark places, Christ inside of us. And as I understand it, as I read in your book With My Eyes Wide Open, that sometimes you're able, or you have people on the team that are able to go out into the people that attend the concerts and be able to pray if people want prayer. Does that happen?
Oh, yeah. Me and the bass player are Christians. And, as it makes sense and as it's open and we can do it, mostly there's fans out by the buses. But then when we go on arena tours, we would ask the venue for a little stage, and we'd go out there by where they sell T-shirts or whatever, gather people around. We'd send a friend of ours to come gather people. Hey, meet us over here if you want to. And so we would tell them our testimonies and pray with them, and give them a chance to respond like we did, and so we've prayed with hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, and so it's harder like overseas because of language barrier and stuff, but we did it even in England, because some places in in England, the accent, you're like, what?
Yeah.
But we tried it and it went good. And
That's awesome.
yeah, so just, Todd White, he's evangelist. He really helped with that. I mean, he came in and we actually filmed for a movie called Holy Ghost. And Todd White, it was like, I was like, Lord, I don't know what to do here. Like, I mean, I share my faith everywhere, but these people expect me probably to preach at them. And so I just waited for his leading. He sent Todd White in and we did it. We just loved on the people.
Yes.
And, tell them your testimony, and that's powerful right there.
Absolutely it is. And I think that for some people it might be strange to look at, like they might think, well, you kind of need to be in church, to share Christ, or I don't know about the metal band or the music, and yet you all make the offer to pray with people and you find that hundreds of people are receptive. Yeah.
There was a guy in 2013 where he got touched and he changed his life around, and he filmed us giving our testimonies. He put the video online and said, look at these guys, they changed my life. I started going to church. About 6 months later, he went hiking and he fell off a mountain and died. And so just that one person, I was like, that's right. Wow. I mean, we were used so mightily for that one man, and I got to record a video. I wanted to fly to his funeral and just honor him, but I sent a video and stuff. So you never know what God's doing and so thankful to be used like that.
Yeah, and those are opportunities to be in places and to be with people that you just wouldn't ever get the opportunity otherwise.
Yeah.
Is it hard for you in any way, Brian, since you did a lot of drugs formerly, when you were with the band Korn, and now you're coming back as a Christian? Is that a struggle, a temptation for you at all, or has God?
Yeah, I'm just totally delivered from that, but the hardest thing is just the touring.
Yeah.
And so I did, I lived on tour buses for over a decade before, and I was not a good boy. And so hanging out in those tour buses, I still feel that it's just kind of a cloud sometimes, and I don't sleep well on the tour buses. That's the main thing. I did try, 2015, 2015, I started drinking wine a little bit here and there, and then that ended up a bad road. So I'm like, I can't have a glass of wine with dinner. Like
some people say.
Like most, whatever. A lot of people can't. I can't have one. Yeah. And so, a couple struggles like that, but that was at home. That wasn't on the road.
Right.
Mostly. So, it's just, but the touring thing is just, it's something that I do for the people. It's more for them and not for me, because it's not my favorite thing to do.
Because it's a mission for you. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
For sharing your story.
Thank you. It was awesome being here.
Good to have you. We want you to stay with us. In just a couple of moments, you're going to hear how Stephanie came to Christ.
Join the Bridges community on Facebook. Visit Facebook and search for Bridges with Monica. We would love to connect with you.
Okay. Well, I had a great family, 2 supportive parents, and we went to church. But when I was 15, I was raped by 2 different men. I lost my virginity. And I started using drugs. I just kept a lot inside because I never told anyone about that. At 19, I ended up trying to kill myself. I OD'd. I moved to live with a Christian family, and I got off drugs and stopped drinking and smoking cigarettes and everything. And I got pregnant, and I had a beautiful son. At the time, I gave him up for adoption. I ended up having another son, and I got married, and we ended up getting a divorce. So my ex-husband got custody of my son. That caused me so much pain, Whenever I was using drugs really heavy, I got pregnant again, and my daughter she was placed for adoption. So now that was 3 children that I had lost, and I just didn't care about anything anymore. So I just kept trying to die, like using all the drugs. I wanted to die in the bathtub. I ended up running a big crack house for a gang, and a lot of really terrible stuff happened. I kept going to the mental institution because using that many drugs, you can't really stay sane. That was a bad life, really bad life. I tried every religion. I studied every religion. And no matter how much I tried to do whatever religion to stop using drugs or for help, it didn't ever work for me. So I eventually went to Satanism, and I sold my soul to the devil. I just remember how awful it was, and I didn't care. And that's the point that I got to, that I was so alone, and I felt like I would do anything. And so I felt a tear from heaven, and I know that's what it was without a shadow of a doubt. But I was at a jail, a local jail, and I was looking at 8 years. Something inside of me where I had already tried every other option of every religion, of every drug, of everything that a person could try, you know, and I was in jail. And I just basically told God this in my mind, and I told him that if he was real, that I really wanted to know that. I feel so grateful. I really needed that time because I was able to read my Bible and get to know Jesus one-on-one and have a relationship with him. And it didn't matter what anyone else said about him. It was how he showed me how he is, and how loving and peaceful and caring and understanding, and just basically how he died for me, so that everything that I did was forgiven. And that was the greatest thing, that the other religions, there were some things that it took the death of Christ to forgive me for, that I couldn't forgive myself for those things, that he had to die so that I could live again. And he showed me that I couldn't sell my soul to Satan because it was never mine in the beginning to sell anyways, and that I hadn't gone too far to come back. I don't think people know that there's nothing that is too much for God to handle, and nothing that the blood of Christ can't undo.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
You can purchase a copy of today's show for $15. Call us at 615-754-0039 or send a check to the address on the screen. Please mention the program number on the screen.